the bottom line for Stone Cold Simpson.
I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest.
This is The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast starring Renny D and friends. Thanks for listening to The Pencil. Subscribe to the show on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
Well, an introduction here for episode 5 for me. Not too bad. A little Metallica to start this episode off. And boy, I'm excited. I am excited. Tonight is the season premiere of the last season of one of my favorite shows, Sons of Anarchy. And they actually can say they have a season because they take a break. They have an off season. They come around every fall. Not the WWE. We'll get into that and a little bit more later on in the show with Travis Mester as we discuss and we dissect and we talk Monday Night Raw. But this is episode 5 of The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast with me, Renny D, and my friends. And my friends tonight, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to be none other than one of the toughest female wrestlers in the professional wrestling business, Miss Natural Heather Patera. Now that last name might sound familiar to a lot of wrestling fans out there, and it should be, because Heather's been around the entire world of wrestling, and she is lighting up the indie scenes like no other, and she's one of my favorite people to share a locker room with. In my 11 years in professional wrestling, we had a fun time hanging out one time after a show in Duluth, Minnesota. Me and a bunch of the boys and Heather went out after the show, and we really lit up a casino, Black Bear Casino. And before I bring Heather on here for our little interview, I want to give you a little background story here on Heather. I met Heather, I don't know, probably 3-4 years ago at the first Steel Domain wrestling show I was on, and maybe it wasn't even that long ago. It was one of my bigger shows I was on. Met Heather for the first time, just a down-to-earth person. Loved every minute of it. But it wasn't until later on that we really started picking up, hanging out a little bit more when we got a chance to hang out at the Black Bear Casino in Duluth, Minnesota for a tattoo convention. And we also had professional wrestling for Saturday and Sunday of that show. Long story short, I'd get there on I believe it was a Saturday. I was told I didn't have to wrestle that day. Awesome, easy payday for me. I'm not complaining. I collect my payday. But that night, the boys had a good idea of let's go out to the casino bar and let's really hang one on. And that's exactly what yours truly did. He hung one on, hung out with Mitch Paradise, Ari Daivari, Eric Cannon, and the whole crew of members, including Miss Natural, Heather Patera. Closed down the bar. I made the mistake, and I apparently didn't know this. After all the years in professional wrestling, I didn't know that you don't tell the boys that you have a room and it's currently to yourself, because apparently Eric Cannon went AWOL. No one knows where he's at. I invite all the boys and Heather and a bunch of other people into my room, and this is a non-smoking room. The room in the morning definitely was not the way it was when we got into it that day. I showed up with 2 cases of PBR, one for myself, one for Eric Cannon. We drank a lot of those PBR that day, but there was people smoking cigarettes and cigars left and right in my hotel room, and I was shocked that Heavy D, David Savage, got his security deposit back. But Heather and I and a couple other boys were hanging out at the casino until probably 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, just causing, I guess you could cause it mischief. I don't know what you want to call it, but we had a good little time. And that just proves what type of person she is. She hung out with the boys. She is one of the boys, and she can hold her own in a locker room, in a professional wrestling ring, and she's been doing so for a long time. If her last name also sounds familiar, it is because she is the daughter of the world-famous strength man, former WWE wrestler Ken Patera. And a little background on this, and this is funny, actually, I really thought that Heather Patera was a gimmick. I never thought it was her legit name until I actually got a chance to know her and get to talk with her a little bit more. But she is a legit Patera. She's a legit daughter of Ken Patera. And for those of you who don't know who Ken Patera is, he was a mainstay in the AWA territory days. It was in the WWE, but a big name in Minnesota professional wrestling, and that's where Heather is from. Ken Patera actually went on to open his own wrestling camp, who then trained Troy Brostrom, who also known to the professional wrestling world as Red Lightning, who then became my trainer. So Heather and I are connected that way, that her father trained the man who trained me in professional wrestling. Heather has been around, and she has been in every state, I believe, in America, wrestling professionally for a long time. We'll get into that and talk about how long she's been wrestling. We're going to talk about how it was like growing up, the daughter of a big-name stud like Ken Patera, and when did she finally get interested in professional wrestling? At what age did she want to be a professional wrestler? There's so many questions we have for Heather, and I don't really have a structure for this interview. I'm kind of just gonna chat with her and see what she's been up to. It's been a while since I've talked with her and seen her. We connected over Twitter. I asked if she'd come on the show, and she said she would. Definitely pretty excited about that. I'm excited anytime a guest comes on my show. It's fun to catch up with people. It's fun to hear their stories, because a lot of the people that I've shared a locker room with, I know inside the wrestling world, but I don't necessarily know them much outside the wrestling world. Case in point, recently, I just listened to an Art of Wrestling podcast, which is hosted by Colt Cabana, who had one of my best friends, or I think one of my best friends here on the wrestling business, Arya Davarian, and I learned things about Arya that I didn't even know, and that's what's interesting about these podcasts, is we have a chance to dive into their lives, not just their life of professional wrestling, but their life outside of professional wrestling. Heather is a very busy person. She puts on a lot of miles on her car traveling to and from independent wrestling shows, but she's also a mother of a beautiful, beautiful daughter, and that's something that we want to get into, as well as how does she go ahead and handle being a mom on the road on the weekends, how tough actually it is, because a lot of people don't understand the life of a professional wrestler. It's not as glorious as people think it is. It's very tough, and when you have to be away from your friends and family and you miss certain events, it really, really weighs heavy on somebody, and that's something that we want to discuss with her, and we'll discuss with other guests that come on our show as well. After our time with Heather here today, we're going to jump into last night's Monday Night Raw, which was the season premiere of Monday Night Raw, which I think is stupid as hell, but we'll get into that a little bit later on after the interview with Heather. But I want to get into this interview with Heather. I think it's going to be great. I think you're going to enjoy it as a fan of professional wrestling. We have some Twitter questions for her that we're going to ask her. But before we get to Heather, I really, really have something that I want to say, and this is something that I need to kind of just put out there as a friend. You've been listening to the show. You might have been hearing the spots for Spot Monkey Media. Spot Monkey Media is owned by my friend Christopher Hoffman out of the Minneapolis, Minnesota. Christopher is a very, very good kid. The guy really, really wants to be involved in professional wrestling and has been for a long time. And I took a liking to to Christopher when I first kind of got into the business, as he was, a pretty cool kid, and everybody liked hanging out with him. And I know that he's made a lot of friends with the guys in the locker room, and that's awesome for him. And we all really appreciate what he's done for us. And things that he's done for us is create logos for new gear, t-shirts, etc. So what I want to do is, if you guys are out there and you're a wrestler or you're a promoter and you need a poster done, or you need new gear design, or you want a t-shirt done, or hell, you just need some web graphics made up, contact Chris. He's at Spot Monkey Media on Twitter. He's going to give you a discount for mentioning the Pencil Podcast, so go ahead and give him that. I believe it's 10% off and free shipping on anything you want, but the kid's going to work with you. He's great at Photoshop. He's great, just a great human being. And if you're looking to, partner with somebody to increase your brand, and if you're a professional wrestler, look no further than Chris. He will walk you through the process. It's very simple, very cool. And tell him that Renny D sent you from the Pencil, and he'll hook you up with some things as well. So with that being said, coming up next is going to be Miss Natural Heather Patera, again, the daughter of the should-be WWE Hall of Famer, but more importantly, one of the toughest female professional wrestlers that I have ever had the chance to meet.
You think you know me?
We are having a great episode, but coming up next is our guest of the evening. You've been listening to The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast with me, Renny D, and my friends. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. And follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
Mismatch, we all looking at you. Mismatch, we all looking at you. Mismatch, we all looking at you. Everything about you is real that comes casual.
And so here we are. After trying to figure out what I want to do on this show for guests, I had a list of guests when it came into the sex category of males, and then I had a sex category for females, and right on top of that category list for the females was none other than Miss Natural Heather Patera. Heather, how are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you?
I'm doing great, and to be honest with you, I wasn't joking around when I just said that. I actually wanted to get you on right away as soon as I could because I am a huge fan of women wrestling, and I'm a huge fan of yours, and I always have been since I met you several years ago, just for a couple of reasons. One, your work inside the ring is untouchable when it comes to what we are used to seeing when it comes to female wrestling or wrestling in general for that matter. But outside the ring, you're pretty awesome as well. A lot of fun to hang out with, and I see a lot of guys. I see a lot of us, and we'll say Heather's one of the boys. And there's nothing that rings more true than that because you go toe for toe with us, beer for beer with us. Half the time we're in bed before you are. It's fantastic. First off, I mean, before we even jump into why you got into professional wrestling, how do you do it? How do you put us to shame at times?
How do what?
How do you put us to shame? How do you outdrink us? How do you stay up? I mean, you have more fun than most of the guys have nowadays, and I just don't know how you can keep doing it.
My Lord, I was just up till like 4:30 in the morning. This was Saturday night after the show with the guys and everything. Whew. Many years of practice. I had great mentors. Come on, Harley Race and my dad.
That is true. I mean, you do keep good company, and for anybody who knows anything about professional wrestling, guys like Harley and guys like your father Ken, they could hold their own when it came to the bar scene. That is one thing for sure. Other than that, I mean, you've been staying busy. We've been kind of keeping track with you, and your schedule is nonstop as always. Is everything on the independent scene right now going swell for you? Is everything going great?
Yeah, everything's going great. I can't ask for anything better. I work for great promotions. The promoters, I love the promoters. I'm lucky to work for promoters that I do. Like, there's Danny Daniels, AAW in Chicago, and David Sabick in Minnesota, and Ed Hellier in Minnesota. I mean, that's just to name a few. But, I'm very lucky to work for promoters that I do, and I have a great relationship with them. So, yeah, I mean, everything's going great. I'm kind of starting to slow down. When I say slow down, maybe doing 3-4 shows a month now.
Okay.
Just because, I went back, I'm starting back into school, and that's kind of kicking my butt right now because I'm so not used to that routine, right? So.
Yeah, well, what are you going, you're going back to school, what are you going back for?
Actually, I have my LPN. I'm going back and doing my generals right now to eventually bridge over into my RN and then eventually get my master's. So, hopefully in 5, 6, 7 years, I'll have a lucrative career after my wrestling career.
And that's something that is very important for anybody out there listening who actually nowadays wants to get into professional wrestling. I've gotten asked many times, how do I get in professional wrestling? Well, here's what you do. You can find a reputable wrestling school, but plan on education. Plan on doing something because pro wrestling, if it doesn't work out for you, you need something to fall back on. And even if it does work out for you, you don't have a lifespan of pro wrestling that lasts forever. At some day... It
takes one move and you're done.
Yeah, one move or countless bumps over the years. I mean, you very rarely come into contact with a professional wrestler who's wrestling past a certain age, and if they are, they're hanging on to something that's no longer there, unless they were a big name in the Fed or whatnot. So that is awesome. I actually have a master's degree as well, and I'm glad to hear that you're going out there and you're doing something because obviously, like you just said, we don't know when our last bump's ever going to be. It could be tomorrow. It could be 20 years. But as long as you set yourself up for success afterwards, you're going to be fine. So I'm extremely happy to hear that. And when we were talking, or when you were just mentioning a couple of the great promoters that you worked for, just real quick, because you and I both worked for David Sabick. Recently, he just announced he's stepping down as Heavy on Wrestling's pretty much, lead man to kind of just relax a little bit. David has a daughter at home, a beautiful family. He just wants to relax a little bit. I said it. I came out publicly and I thanked him. David gave me one of my biggest breaks when it came to wrestling because he ran really reputable shows. He always has
Yes.
you on. Him and Ed Hellier always make sure that you're a mainstay on. Is there anything that you'd say to David if you have a chance to I guess for the years and for the different events that he's had you on?
Oh man, like I actually like him and I will email on Facebook quite a bit, just giving each other shit, you know.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, it is, you know, I totally understand because like he puts in so much work into just one of his shows that he promotes. You know, it's not like a indie promoter that runs every single weekend that draws, 50 to 150 people. He's putting on like shows that are drawing 500 to 2,000 people.
Right.
You know, so he's putting on like quality shows that are like really like, oh my gosh, like the Legends show that we just did August 23rd. Man, that card was so stacked, and just the headaches. I mean, you got to think you got to deal with the flights and like. I mean, we were driving from the Minneapolis airport to 4 hours north in Wisconsin and Bayfield and everything. So, I mean, he's got all that stuff to figure out. And, he's got his family. Like you said, he's got Nora, his daughter. I mean, kids take a lot of your time, and it's hard doing both. So, it's a hard balance act. But John Wolford has taken it over just as class act, just like David and everything. So...
Yeah, and I've had nothing but positives working with both of them. Honestly, if I've ever had an issue, I could bring it up to them and not have to worry about causing heat or anything like that. And they're straight shooters. There was no bullshit with those two. You got paid. They took care of you well. They made sure you had a reputable opponent in the ring. And I know John will continue to do that for you and for everybody else that works for him. And Heavy is, it's fantastic. He does it right. And he may not run every month, but when he runs well. And I had Lance Hoyt on. Yeah. I just had Lance Hoyt on last week, and he had nothing but good things to say about the Legends show. The card was stacked. Tell me about your match on that show, because you worked somebody that you hadn't worked or you haven't wrestled in quite a while. Is that correct?
10 years.
Right.
I got to work my one of my best friends, Josie, aka Sojo Bolton TNA, which was probably like one of the. I cracked up so hard during that match because I remember I just. Beating her, and I'd go, welcome, I think I said, welcome back to the Indies, honey. Boom, slapped her across the face. Then she gets the upper hand on me, and she just bolts out, sorry, you were never on TV, Heather. Boom, right across my face, and it was a good slap, but, I mean, it's one of those where you're just like, that was funny,
And I'm really glad for a couple things. One, you got to kind of get back in the ring with somebody I've been in the ring with a long time. But for the fan base that was at that show, you really don't get a chance to see female wrestling, the quality of female wrestling that's actually out there. And when I broke into the business, I broke into watching Rain and Lacey, 2 Minnesota mainstays, just tear it up almost in every show I was at. And then when they went away, there was nothing here. And now everybody is so accustomed to what they see on Mondays and Fridays and sometimes on Wednesdays. Now, albeit TNA does have and decent a girls division or women's division isn't that bad compared to the WWE. But how would you, in your eyes, let's take a look at the product real quick on TV before we jump into your track record. How would you sum up the product on TV compared to what you do?
I mean, I don't want to be cocky or anything on it, but I wrestle, I mean, that's just downright, I wrestle. I don't give a TNA show, that's just on top of wrestling,
Right.
But I'm there, I've been trained, I've been doing it 14 years, and I'll take nothing away from Natalia, AJ Lee, and Paige, because they're hell of wrestlers, the TNA girls, and I don't really watch wrestling on TV, honestly. It's very far and few between, but if I do, and it's only little spurts, but TNA's got some good, has usually always had really good quality wrestling on there. Now, with TV wrestling, it just seems that they don't utilize the women properly that can wrestle.
Right.
To me, it's if they let Natalia, Beth Phoenix, even actually I should say back then, because that's when they pretty much had models for the divas. I'll call them divas. They're not wrestlers, but for the divas, and it's like Natalia and it seemed like when I was watching, it seemed like Natalia and Beth were being just pushed back to the back, to the back burner. And it's like one of those. It's like, man, if they, and I'm sure they thought, but all they care, it's all about ratings and money and everything. But if they had girls like Natalia and Beth, like getting in the ring with the girls that really didn't know how to work, that they'd make those girls look so much better because they're fucking phenomenal wrestlers,
Right, and I think you've been seeing more of that on TV now too. Natalia's been really in the ring with some of these divas, as you call them, as I'll call them too. It's just there's garbage and there's great, and they have both there, and they can work with it, but it's very hard to watch even for me, and I watch for the wrestling aspect. So when I see two women get out there and beat the shit out of each other, like I'm sure you and Josie did. I seen pictures and I seen the facial expressions. That is awesome to me. We're not their probably typical audience, obviously, when we're talking about the big company. But it is what it is, and I'm not sure if they're going to go back to, with Paige and AJ Lee, it's great to see those, but those girls are on the indies, just like you, and there's a reason why they're so good. But now it's fantastic, and they had a chance to work in the front of small crowds, as you and I did. You mentioned Minnesota a couple of times. We talked about promoters. Your roots are in Minnesota. You're born and raised in Minnesota. Your father is Ken Patera. Now, I mentioned when I first met you, I thought that was a work. I didn't know you well enough to know that was legit.
A lot of people. Well, I'm not blood. I am actually adopted. That's not,
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I mean, that's what I want. Some people are just like, oh, you're not blood. I was like, I'm adopted. But like he always says, he's like, just because you're not blood doesn't mean you're not my kid.
Exactly.
What other people don't know, it's just not just like Emily and Natalie. It's also, he's got two other stepkids too.
Sure.
That nobody else knows about too. So it's just kind of like those annoying things. It's like whatever.
Right.
It's whatever.
So
I don't care. Like, I mean, that's what, I mean, I never really, I shouldn't say I never really, I didn't want to use the name just, when I first started because I wanted to do it on my own, but now it's like, it's kind of like where I'm old enough now where it's just like, I'm not using it to get anywhere.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you use the mantra Miss Natural more so than anything. I don't really hear a lot of people call you. I mean, besides a couple of people will call you Heather once in a while, but they always refer to you as Miss Natural.
Yeah. I prefer natural more than anything. I hate my name, so.
So now, as far as growing up in that environment, how was that like for you growing up? Your dad, Ken, big-time power lifter, champion of the world, WWE. How was that for a kid growing up, experiencing that?
Well, actually, I was adopted actually later.
Okay.
So I was with my mom, mainly when I was a kid. So yeah, I mean, it's basically it wasn't really till like mid-teens.
Okay. Well, I mean, you obviously
and everything. So yeah, but I mean, it was really awesome, because it's just like he's got this, this history that people like just. It's kind of like whenever I saw, everybody like, oh my gosh, I remember Harley at, wrestling at the Chase. And then they're like, man, I remember your dad at the Pan Am Games, or when he, stood up against the wall with, with the truck and everything with his legs pushing on it while the gas was going and everything. Like, yeah, it's like people, and it's really cool to hear the stories and everything. Like Emily is like on my Facebook too. So like whenever somebody tags me in a, something with him in it, I usually try to tag her in it too. 'Cause right now she's living with him and everything, so it's like so she can pass it along and everything.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, the legend of Ken Patera. Obviously, you heard the stories, we all have, and they're fantastic. At what age then, Heather, did you realize that, hey, this is something that I want to do? I want to be involved in the showmanship of professional wrestling. I want to be a professional wrestler.
Actually, I was one of my uncles when I was younger. I think I want to say I was like 7.
Okay.
I actually started watching wrestling around 7, and I just seen, and I can't even say it was the showmanship more than anything. It was more the athletic. I've been in sports since I was like 4 years old. So and that's how my dad actually gave me my name. Because he's like, can I swear on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
He's like,
fuck if I care. Say what you want.
Yeah, he's like, fuck, you play every single sport under the sun. He's like, you excel at it. Fuck, I'm calling you Miss Natural. So I said, all right, and that's how. So it's kind of like a Mr. Perfect gimmick,
Right.
But yeah, like I played like, soccer, basketball, softball. I played like 25 years. I played hockey, basketball. Did I say basketball already? I can't remember. But yeah, I just played a ton of sports. And I'd play I remember softball. I'd be up to on 4 different leagues, from spring to fall. So I'd be playing about 6-7 days a week. So I was always doing something. So with wrestling, it was just my next step, into the athleticism more of it than anything. And of course, it kind of helps having that direction sitting right in front of you, where there's a school right there, you know.
Exactly.
And your family, so.
And wrestling, obviously wrestling, the athleticism is extremely important in wrestling, but a lot of people, as a fan, you don't understand that there's more to it than the athleticism. And you probably, growing up maybe in the atmosphere, maybe knew that a little bit, but the psychology of professional wrestling takes a lot of work to get good at. And so you picked, you went to Harley Race's school, correct? Is that where you went?
Yeah, that was the second school I was at. Yeah, because my dad was pretty much, excuse me, he kind of started slowing down on shows and everything, and I was going to Harley's. Actually, I started in May of 2000, and I started going to Harley's in September of 2000 to work for Harley and everything. And so Harley was my second school going to and everything. And oh man, one of the reasons, other than his school shutting down, but watching the matches between Trevor Murdoch and his tag team Bull Schmidt, partner Bull Schmidt, and then there's Matt Murphy and Superstar Steve. Those 4 were honestly two of the best tag teams I have seen on the indies, just because of their psychology. Their psychology was just outstanding. I tell everybody, they could have a 45-minute to an hour match, and they could have the crowd into it the whole time without doing high spot. It's just old school working. It's working. Working the people's minds. The psychology of it. They didn't have to. They weren't wrestling to get a pop out of the crowd. Just by doing moves. They were wrestling smart. Right. And it's something that's very kind of, to me, it's very rare on the indie scene. A lot of people are like, oh, yeah, your gimmick, yeah. I'm like, there's no gimmick with me. I said, I just wrestle. I'm an old school wrestler, yes, but I'm like, I have no gimmick.
Yeah, and I agree. And you said you named a couple people's names there. Now, were they growing up in wrestling or getting into wrestling? Your role models in wrestling, was it Trevor? Was it guys like that? Or was there a female wrestler that you kind of looked up to and said, hey, that's somebody that I want to be like? Or did you look more up to the boys and say, this is a style that I want to adapt when I'm in the ring with people?
No, like I tell people, I appreciate what the women have done for the women in this business. People like Leilani Kai, Diana Von Hoffman, Ula, and Mae Young. Props to them for paving the way for us. But I've never honestly have looked up to a female wrestler. For style-wise, sure. I was more into my Minnesota boys. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, my dad. Ganya. I was more. I'm one of those I'm one of the boys. I've always been one of the boys.
Yeah, and your style, your style in the ring definitely shows too. As far as you have a very strong style type of a move set, and when you lay them in, and you can tell it, and it's awesome, and it's something that you don't see from many females, and hell, it's something you don't see from many of the boys anymore either. So many people are very touchy-feely when it comes to this business that it makes it look like shit, and it irritates me. But I can turn around and watch one of your matches and say, hey, if Heather's got somebody in the corner, you're gonna know that she's beating the hell out of somebody, because you can tell it, you can feel it, and that's what's great about your style in the ring, and it kind of shows through that does make sense, that you do adapt that old school style that you've seen from the Minnesota boys. And you had great role models. Minnesota wrestling was fantastic. Part of that, I have a question to ask you, and this is kind of a personal question, as far not personal, but with the robe gimmick. And now, did you like Mr. Ric Flair? Did you or not, or did you just want the robe because it's awesome? Because the robes are fucking sweet.
I love the robes are effing sweet, man. I never really, honestly, Ric Flair. Kudos to who he was with his wrestling and everything. But I was never. I don't want to say this being mean or facetious or what, I mean, but I was never a fan
Sure.
of him. And he's a person I never really watched because I wasn't interested, but I did love his, his robe and everything. But I was actually I would love one just like Ravishing Rick Rude. Ravishing Rick Rude, when I saw Ravishing Rick Rude with his robe, I'm like, man, that is so badass. And now Pierce has those, that are more like Rick Rude, and I'm just like, man, I want one of those. But my mom was the one who actually made that robe, and I was just like, man, I want a robe. But, in a way, I mean, because it's like I grew up, spoiled, silver spoon in hand and everything. So, it's like one was like, hey, I can kind of incorporate that, and now it's just more like, I am who I am. I'm an old school ass kicking brawler bitch who likes to drink beer. That's my attitude when I go out there now, So it's like I don't really wear the robe anymore because of that, It's just I'm a totally different person than when I first started wearing, younger, wearing the robe and everything, and now, I mean, I'm a mom. I'm a softie, believe it or not.
Well, the thing is, like when you say you're an ass kicking, beer drinking bitch, I mean, not to call you a bitch, but this is kind of who you are outside the ring, though. So when your personality in the ring is very much like your personality outside the ring, as far as when you're hanging out with us and you're not putting on an act, it's not a gimmick, like you said. This is who you are, and that's why you're so good, and why. That I believe that you're very successful, at least on the indie scene, is because you are who you are. And they always say those who are the most successful are the ones who don't have to put on an act in a 20x20. They're themselves. They're the ones that can draw money. And you've done a great job of that. And now, before we kind of get further along into your career, you went to Harley's in September. You said, how long were you in camp before you had your first wrestling match?
Oh, honestly, it was not a month, maybe.
Okay. Now, do you remember your first opponent?
My dad. Her name was Shay Physique, and this is funny. So, obviously I was brand new. Actually, I mean, I caught on to wrestling really, really fast. I mean, granted, you know how it is when you're first new, and there was no female wrestlers in Minnesota, so they're like, oh, hey, you're catching on. I remember there, first day I was walking up, I was taking bumps. Whatnot, and I put an arm bar on without them even telling me what to do, and I mean that's just from watching, everything, and so it was 4 weeks, and June 10th of 2000 was my first match. It was I want to say Warrens, Wisconsin, at the Jellystone Park.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was Shay Physique, and she was more flexible, kind of like a gymnast.
Okay.
She did fitness. Do you remember Shay at all?
I don't. I was going to ask you if she's still around, but I mean, I don't. The name does not.
I think she only wrestled for 2 years. It was pretty much for Kenny and my dad, Kenny, and then Harley, and so I mean, she didn't really go out much at all.
Okay.
And it was her, and it's funny I mean, the first match, I remember one of my sisters, she's like, are you nervous? I said, no, not at all. Because it's just I was ready for it. It's like playing a sport, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready for this, And it went fine. And I remember sitting down with Trevor, and I was like, dude, I want you to watch my first match. And he's like, okay, I put it in. Of course, here I am giggling because just the quality from then and a year and a half later was totally different,
It's amazing. It is amazing.
And, I'm sitting here giggling. Yeah, and then Trevor, I go to him, I'm like, what do you think? He kind of looks at me, he's like, it was better than my first match. I'm like, no shit.
And it's great, because after your first match and you get fans that come up to you and say, that was awesome, that was great, and you're on a high, you're like, God, I'm the best damn thing since sliced bread. And then, you watch it back, and you're just like, I mean, in my case, I thought it was awesome. I thought my shit didn't stink. I was green as goose shit. I watch it back and it's the shits. It's terrible. But that's the mindset you have. So your first match, I mean, you're happy with it. It sounds like you're okay with it. But then a year and a half later, obviously you progressed.
You actually watch it a year or 2 years down the road. You're like, ooh,
Right.
It's funny, yeah. But the one good thing though is having an aesthetics background for anybody is always a plus with this business,
Yeah, so, you can't teach athleticism.
the ones, especially the females that I've seen, come and go in the last. So, like, I mean, I've seen so many females that had zero athletic background, and it's like, why are you in the ring?
Right.
You know, why? You know, why? You don't belong here. And I hate saying that, but it's the truth, because they learn a lot slower, and I don't know. To me, sometimes it seems like that's where some girls get more of an attitude, like, yeah, I'm good, you know.
Yeah, and they get into wrestling for all the wrong reasons, I think, too, when it comes to people like that. And even the guys, they get into because they think they're going to get rich. They saw it on TV a couple of times. They thought it would be easy, so they could do it. And those are the people that piss me off. And then there's people like you and I who want to do this, and this is our dream, and it's the only thing we ever wanted, but then you get somebody like that comes in and kind of pisses all over it, and just, it's irritating. If you're going to get into professional wrestling, get into it because you want to be a professional wrestler and you love it, not because you're going to want to get rich overnight, because it doesn't happen that way. That's for sure.
No, it doesn't. It's it's like maybe the top 5% on the indie scene, which, I mean, isn't that much, you know, maybe can make a living on the indie scene.
Right.
And the chances of being called up are very slim.
Yeah, especially nowadays. You know, getting called. I mean, they have signed a few more indie talent as of late, but I guess, how long would you say that you were in wrestling from your first match to the point where you sat down and you thought to yourself, I actually get this? You finally felt like you get the business, you get how to structure a match and have a good match on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I would say it was probably a year and a half into it. You know, I'd say after like 6 months after I moved down to Harley's, you know, because I moved down I started in May 2000. I started with Harley of August of 2000, and then I didn't move, or September 2000, and then I didn't move down to Harley's until about late August. And I want to say about maybe 6 months after, like that's what really started, psychology. I mean, because like I said, like Trevor Murdoch had like a lot to do with my training. You know, I mean, him and Bull, I mean, like they always say, he's like, we beat your ass. He's like, but we never beat your ass so bad where we felt bad. We knew you could take it, and we knew you would catch on. Right. You know, so I want to say at least, I'd say 6 months after I moved down there, just, you know, I mean, it's like one thing I gotta tell people, I was like, man, Trevor, we'd get done wrestling, and the next day we'd hang out, because we used to live together. Like, there was a bunch of us that lived together in a house down there when I first moved down there. But we would, he'd watch, I swear, I tell people, I swear he'd watch his matches 10 times over. I said, because he would nitpick, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I should have done this, it would have made more sense. You know, and it's one of those, like, whenever I went to Trevor or I went to Matt Murphy would be like, I say, hey, I'm going to do this, this, and this. So what do you think? He's like, okay, why would you do that? Mm-hmm. He would actually make you think on why would you do that? Why does that make sense to do that, you know?
Exactly.
I go to Trevor with the same question. Trevor would be like, yeah, I like that, but maybe if you could, you know, put something right in this spot. You know, so it's like they both were really good teachers with the psychology.
Right. And Trevor obviously comes from a great wrestling background. So, you know, there's just, and that's the thing, when they ask you, well, why do you want to do that? And it actually makes you think about it instead of just giving you the answer. You learn so much quicker. Exactly. And I had a privilege in Minnesota. I came up when the guys were still very good. Not compared to what, and this is not making fun of all of Minnesota, but this is, as far as majority of the indie scene, a lot of it is garbage now as far as talent out there.
And it's true. And I hate saying that, you know, because, I mean, it's just that, people are too money hungry. They'll be like, okay, yeah, you can come to my camp. You'll pay $3,000. Okay, yeah, you're in.
Right, and they don't train them like they did.
I've seen it done.
Right, and they don't train like they used to. That's for sure. I mean, you come in, you get in the ring before a wrestling show. You roll around maybe for an hour. You help set up, take down the ring, and that's a day of training for people now. And it's sad because, like before I left Minnesota, there were a handful of promoters that I would work for that. The shows were always quality from top to bottom, and then there were times now where they would pay me what I wanted for money, and I would turn it down because I'd see what the quality of the show was, or I'd see who's on the show, and I didn't want to be associated with it. And that's sad. I never really wanted to give up a payday per se, but I also didn't want to be associated with the people that I'm the one, that I'm saying is garbage, because then I'm a hypocrite. So I wanted to associate myself with good shows.
it's like guilt by association. Especially in this business, it's a guilt by association.
Right, exactly. Now, you've been wrestling, you said 14 years now?
Yeah, a little over 14 years now.
A little over 14 years. Do you know, I mean, obviously you don't know when your last bump's going to be, but do you have kind of a structured plan as far as how much longer you want to do this for, or are you kind of just going, and as long as you feel good, you're going to keep doing it?
Yeah, I keep on saying, oh, when I'm 35, I'll retire. But you know what? That's less than a year.
Sure.
So, yeah, and I mean, my body still feels good. I mean, granted, like, I've gained quite a bit of weight, but actually I hired my ex-husband for my personal trainer, which he's an amazing personal trainer. He kicked my ass yesterday morning, and he's going to kick my ass tomorrow morning. And the thing is, it's like, as long as, like, I stay in shape,
right.
I mean, my body's not going to hurt that much. And honestly, I can say that I've had, like, one major injury, and I was 21 years old, and I haven't had a major injury since.
Right. That's
so
awesome.
I'm very fortunate, but I'm also safe with what I do.
Exactly.
It's like, if I can't do it, or if I don't feel comfortable doing it, I'm going to tell the person, no, and it's just like, I mean, I'll do some stupid bumps here and there, but yeah, as long as I keep I went to a doctor for my physical a couple of years ago, and the doctor's like, well, she's like, you're looking good, everything seems good. She's like, you got 10 more years if you don't do anything stupid. So I was like, cool.
Right, and that's great. Yeah, I got injured one time in the ring. I got kicked in the face, broke my nose. Other than that, I'd never gotten seriously hurt in wrestling. I tore my ACL playing basketball, of all things. I never hurt anybody outside of just a random potato or a receipt here and there. I never hurt anybody, which I was very proud about. And that's the thing. Like, if you can be safe in the ring, you can go at this a long time. And if you can stay in shape, you definitely can keep going as long as you want to. You're going to school, you're getting an education, you're also a mother, and I want to touch on that. How do you do that portion? Because you're a mom, you have a daughter, you're on the road traveling. Yeah. I tell my audience, they don't understand the hours that we put into this. It's a craft, it's a way of life. We're on the road, we're pounding the pavement. As a mom, knowing that you got to go away for a weekend, how is that for you?
She's getting better with it. She does get sad when I leave, but then the moment I say, I'll bring you something back, she's like, okay,
sure.
go. But yeah, it's one of the cool thing is nowadays is that there's smartphones. She's got an iPod, I got my Galaxy, so we tango, so I can see her face and everything. Yeah. So I did that when I was up in Michigan for a week. We would just tango and everything, just to say hi. I love you. She texts me on there, and like, what was it? We just did that WWE stint like last week as extras. And sure, honey. And she tried calling me, and the cutest little thing ever. She goes, "Oops, sorry, I accidentally forgot you're wrestling." But it was like the cutest little thing. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is so adorable." Yeah. So.
Well, good. As long as as long as it's not extremely difficult, and then obviously the smartphone thing, that's come a long way. I mean, that's fantastic. You're able to do that. The last thing I want to touch on with you, Heather, is your stint on Raw last week. You were called in as an extra. Now, did you reach out to them, or did they call you and say, hey, we need you to come? Because like when I went there, I reached out to them initially, and then they called me. Like I reached out to them months beforehand. They called me. I went down for a Raw and SmackDown taping. And now this was in Des Moines you were in Des Moines, correct? That's because that's where I went to. So
yeah, it was Des Moines and Lincoln. Actually, no, I did one tryout match like 10 and a half years ago with Josie, actually, and it was just a terrible, terrible weekend. Like, I mean, it was just like all around. If anything could go wrong, it went wrong that weekend. So it was our tryout was terrible, and so honestly, like I've had no desire to go back because I was just like, whatever, dude. I'm whatever.
Sure.
And my buddy actually from up there, he actually ended up calling me, and at first I was just like, I was just like, well, where is it? And he's like Des Moines and Lincoln. I'm like, okay. And then he said, you can bring people along, because at first I was just like, I got a gas guzzler because I need to map this stuff out,
Right.
And, and then he's like, oh, well, if you can get some other people, then I'm like, oh, okay, if I can get other people, fine,
Sure.
But, like, it was one of those things. He said, yeah, there's a chance for a tryout match, too. And I said, man, don't worry. I said, don't worry. I'm too old and I'm too fat for that company, because I was just like, and it was more on the whole thing that, you know, that first experience, I was just kind of like at a whatever. But I mean, as an extra, I would have been, you know, and it was a blast, you know, like it was great. It was funny because like the second day, I got the first day I did the Bo Dallas gimmick and everything. And what was it? Then I did, the Rosebud gimmick. It was a dark match in between shows that they were filming.
Sure.
And actually, for a moment, I wasn't going to be able to be a Rosebud. Whoever it was, they're like, who's the Rosebud? We all raise their hand, and the one guy points to me. He's like, your facial features are too prominent. He's like, you won't be able to be a Rosebud. I'm like, that's okay with me. And then somebody's like, well, what if she put a mask on? And he's like, if you put a mask on, then you can do it.
That's the thing. Isn't that crazy too? Like they did 7 takes when I was there for the simplest scene, but they're very particular. Like with something like that, it's amazing to me how very particular they are with little things like that.
Yeah, because it's one of those things, like, I didn't think that my facial features were very prominent, you know, so I was just like, okay, I was like, no, that's cool, even though it was just a dark match,
right?
You know, that's the funny thing, it was not for TV or anything, so that's why I thought it was kind of weird. I'm like, okay, I didn't think I stepped out that much, but, yeah, no, but I had such a blast doing the Rosebud gimmick, and it was great, you know. So, and ended up having a tryout match again with, what was it, Scott Armstrong was there, and he's just like, who's the wrestlers here? And we raised our hands. He's like, okay, you two, and you two, and you two, you're going to have 5-minute matches. And I just looked at Crazy Mary. I just looked at her, I was like, fuck.
Right?
I was like, man, I didn't want to do it because I didn't want another disaster of a match, you know, happening, and whatnot. So I'm just like, and I was like, okay. I was like, we got it. And anyway, ended up having a really good match. We got a lot of compliments from it. So, it's one of those, for me, my buddy said, he's like, the odds are stacked against you. Just drop weight, but Mary, and I just like, I want this for Mary, you know, she's young. She's such, she's got a very open mind when it comes to, you know, she's very teachable, you know, she's all for taking ideas in, and, you know, so she, you know, it's something that would be really good. I think she'd be really good, you know, up there and everything. So
perfect. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I love the fact that you're on TV. It's awesome. They take care of you. They pay you. But you were in one of the worst segments I have ever seen in my entire life, Heather. It was god-awful to watch on television with you guys sitting up on stage. Just because it was so far-fetched as far as there's the Bo Dallas thing. I love the gimmick as far as he's very, as a person, you can actually, you could hate him. You can just be annoyed with him. He does that well. But I guess just the fact that the first guy bet his entire farm on professional wrestling with everybody knows you're not betting in professional wrestling. The second dude got deported, right? And then your daughter, your son now believes in Vladimir Putin. It was really stupid to watch, but it was really awesome to see you on there. Because when you walked out, I was like, oh shit, Heather, that's awesome. I didn't realize you were going in or anything like that. So, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how stupid people thought it was. You were there. You got another tryout match, number 2. You got feedback. You got fed well, and you got paid. So, they take care of you.
Anything better.
Yes.
That actually, it's so funny because I wasn't really I was like the whole Bo Dallas gimmick. I was just like, man, I'm not really a fan of it. But actually sitting there listening to it, before it went on, TV.
Sure.
I popped really huge. I'm like, this is awesome. I get it now, you know. Just especially his facial features.
Oh yeah, he plays it well.
And it's I wanted to laugh so hard. I couldn't stop giggling, he's doing this stuff, and I'm kind of chuckling because I'm like, how does he do this so serious? Right. And then the sad thing, does not laugh.
The weird thing is he did that with you guys on Monday, and he wasn't on the show last night. So, there's just the inconsistency there with what they're doing, and maybe they realized they weren't as happy with the actual whole thing. And again, it has nothing to do with you guys at all, obviously, but it's just, I don't know. I we'll see what they do in the future, but it's cool. Great feedback. And I guess with that, we'll wrap it up. I mean, I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and your path in professional wrestling. And it's fun just to shoot the shit with you because, yeah, like we said, you're one of the guys. I haven't talked to you in a while, so it was nice to catch up with you. I guess where can people see you? They can follow you on Twitter. Can you give us your Twitter handle? And then you have your upcoming schedule you can share with us?
Yeah, my Twitter is at Miss Natty NATTY 00. I'm very sarcastic. Don't take me serious because I think I'm funny in my head, so then I put that stuff on there.
Perfect.
And some things I like ticking people off sometimes just for fun.
Sure.
So yeah, no, I'm very sarcastic. If you ask me questions on there, I'm very sarcastic usually with answers.
And she'll answer them though. She will definitely give you an answer whether you like it or not. You're going to get one, so that's awesome. And then where can people see you next? Where are you going to be at? What's your upcoming schedule?
Actually, I will be wrestling for Harley Race this Saturday.
Okay, awesome.
In Lynn, Missouri. Hold on, let me see. Actually, the 20th and stuff I'm taking off. I do customs, so like I'm doing a custom shoot, and then I'll be back in action at AAW in Chicago, Shimmer Weekend. What is that? The 17th, 18th, 19th. I mean, I'm trying to think here. I'm trying to pull up my schedule here. It's almost pulled up, but yeah, there's that. In November 8th, supposed to be back in Independence, Missouri for a new federation, GFW. Then November 1st, Richmond, Missouri. This is going to be one of my favorite matches. It's always a great crowd, about 300 people there, and the crowd's just hot all the time.
Awesome.
It's for Harley Race's World League Wrestling, but it'll be one of Stacey O'Brien and I's best of 5 matches. Like we had one there a couple weeks ago, and man, it was a barn burner. So. But yeah, I got quite a few. I'm working for Harley Race again pretty regularly.
Good.
So you can always check out on like Facebook, World League Wrestling, or on Twitter. I believe it's at World League. Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely tweet those out to you guys too, so you guys can follow them. And like you said, you can definitely follow Heather or Natural on Twitter it's MISSNATTY00. She's all over. If she's going to be on a show near you, or even if you have to drive a couple hours, it's definitely worth it. I guess so. Natural, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you again, and I hope we can have you on again sometime soon because I'm sure we can talk for hours if we really wanted to.
I know. I'll tell some stupid stories.
Perfect. All right.
No, thank you. Thank you, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, and you take care, okay?
Hey, this is Chris with Spot Monkey Media. Are you a professional wrestler, a promoter, a business owner? Spot Monkey Media offers creative media solutions for your brand or business. Whether it's merchandise design or promotional material for your next event, Spot Monkey Media will work hands-on to bring your ideas to life. Spot Monkey Media. Create your legacy. Get a free high five when you mention this podcast. Connect with us on Twitter at Spot Monkey Media.
I'm different, yeah, I'm different. I'm different, yeah, I'm different. I'm different, yeah, I'm different. Pull up to the scene with my cellar messing. 2 chains got your girl on.
You are listening to The Pencil, a pro wrestling podcast with Renny D and friends, like me, Travis Mester, coming at you every Tuesday with our take on the world of professional wrestling. Listen to us on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
We are back with Travis Mester on the phone. Dirty boy, you and I both had a fantastic weekend. I mentioned earlier I went to the Wisconsin Badgers game in Madison. Didn't get a lot of sleep, but you, my friend, went to a cowboy country music concert, Garth Brooks, baby, in Chicago, Illinois. How was that?
Great. Top 5 weekend of all time, my man. Top 5 weekend of all time. Best country concert I've ever seen. Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood. If they ever come somewhere near you, go see them. Great music, even better entertainment. It was a remarkable weekend, and I too did not get much sleep, but I'm here, I'm awake, I'm ready to talk some wrestling.
We talk some wrestling, but let's talk this concert real quick, because to my understanding, didn't Garth Brooks do like 4 straight days, 2 concerts a day, and he sold every single one of them out? Is this true, or is this totally false?
He did. So where he played was at the Allstate Arena.
Which for the record, people, the Allstate Arena, I went to WrestleMania there, and that is the same WrestleMania where CM Punk was a gangster on the side of John Cena's vehicle. Fantastic show. Not very big, but if you sell out 2 shows a day for 4 days, god damn, you're making some money.
Yep, that was the deal. So him and Trisha Yearwood, whenever he went on his first tour in 1990, and apparently Garth Brooks has a family friend who is a close personal friend of the general manager of Allstate Arena. So that is the story behind why he chose that arena to start his tour, because this is the first time he's been on tour for 14 years, and he played all his old stuff and whatnot, and he was fantastic still, but he could sell out anywhere in America, but he chose that place because that's where he started his concerts back in the day, and it had some sentimental reasons behind it. So whenever he started selling tickets, he basically set up to have one show Friday and Saturday night, and then that morphed into having 2 shows a day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because he just kept saying that he'll do another show, and as long as they sell out, he'll keep doing it. And it sold out in about 10 minutes every time he put up a new show. But after he got to 2 shows per day, he halted it, because I don't think he thought it was going to be as big as it was. But for good reason, people were going, because it was a magnificent show, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and the Allstate's not big by any means. I mean, it probably seats 13,000, 14,000 people. It's definitely not huge. It was one of the last times that WrestleMania was at a small venue, and then they started doing football stadiums and baseball stadiums and all that stuff. And Garth Brooks, like you said, could sell them out too. And yeah, I'm jealous, man. I've always wanted to see him. I maybe when I go to Vegas next week, so maybe, one of these times if he goes back to Vegas and plays there, maybe I can hit a concert up in Vegas, but we'll see. That's a story for a different day. Yeah, man, I think we're going to have a little disagreement here today. Travis and I were kind of texting here throughout the day about last night's Monday Night Raw and what his thoughts were and what my thoughts were, and I have a feeling that I don't think I'm overreacting, but I enjoyed the show a lot. I thought it was one of the best Raws they've had in a while. But maybe that's because the Labor Day show left such a bad taste in my mouth that anything would have been better than that damn show. Why didn't you like the show, or why did you think it wasn't that great?
Like, as soon as I finished up watching it, I felt like you just said, the Labor Day show left so much to be desired that if we called last week, say a 2 or a 3 on a good day for how good that was on a scale of 1 to 10, this show was better, but I don't want to overreact to how much better it was. I can't tell you that it was more than a 3.5 or a 4 on my personal scale. I just didn't think there was anything that surprised me. There was nothing that was new. There was nothing that there was too many bad segments and too many things that just didn't keep my interest. There were a couple things I liked, but I need more than a couple things that I liked to give it any sort of good grade, I think.
See, that's where I think I was talking to somebody today about the show, and I picked out 3 segments that I didn't like. Of the whole show, in 3 hours, I had 3 segments only that I didn't like, which is remarkable because generally I have a lot. The 3 segments that I thought were stupid were the Divas match, shocking. The Bella Twins with Jerry Springer, also shocking. And then the Bunny, Adam Rose, stupid gimmick, super kick, bullshit stuff that they did that I think is just dumb as hell. Those are the 3 things that I didn't like. Every other thing in the show I was a fan of. What were the things that you didn't like about the show? Like, were there things that besides, I'm sure all 3 of those things are probably in your list as well. Were there other ones outside that you didn't like, or was it just so predictable in your book?
Those three obviously were at the top of my list, with the Jerry Springer crap being at the very top of my list of the bullshit that I don't want to watch on TV.
Right.
If I wanted to watch Jerry Springer, I would. I didn't understand. I don't think they did a very good job of explaining what the season premiere of Monday Night Raw or whatever they were trying to do.
Yeah, I still think that's fucking stupid.
Yeah, I don't know what I think about it, because I don't think they did a good job of explaining what it meant. Because if somebody were to turn on the TV and last night was the first time they watched wrestling, are they supposed to believe that that's the first wrestling show that there's ever been? Because I've been watching wrestling for years and years and years, and I didn't know why they were calling it that. So I can't imagine if somebody that didn't know what was going on in general, what they would think. So they didn't explain that part of the show.
The only reason they did that is because Total Divas debuted the night before, season premiere of Total Divas. This week and next week are the season premieres of the fall season of the new shows. They wanted to be part of that pie for some stupid reason. I don't understand why. It has nothing to do with sports. It has all to do with TV and how they segmented in TV. Did it change one thing or another about the show? Absolutely not. It was still Raw. They do Raw 52 weeks a year. I don't understand it either. But they are trying to go along with all the other shows that are having their big season premieres. So maybe they think it's going to generate some extra buzz. I don't. I think it's fucking stupid, but I guess that's their thought process behind it. I'm not a fan of it at all.
Other things that I had thumbs down on, Rusev and Lana, whatever that segment was supposed to be, thumbs down. I think it seems rushed. It didn't seem like a complete thought. It seems like something that creative just said, here's your bullet points, go out and talk about this. We're going to play some music in the background. I don't know what the goal of that segment was. I thought the AJ and Paige against Natalya and Rosa Mendez was awful. I thought the Orton and Reigns wasn't a bad match, but and maybe this is just me thinking too much about it. How many times that we watch in which the heels take out a face, how many times do faces run out to try to help out the other face? There's no reason to have the cage come down other than just, hey, we got a cage up there, let's bring it down. You don't need to do that, because if you have the cage on top, nobody's coming out to help Roman Reigns. That doesn't happen. It's not like John Cena or Dolph Ziggler or Sheamus or somebody that's a face is going to say, oh, don't beat him up, I'm going to come help. You're going to have a 3-on-1. How many 3-on-1s have we seen in the last 8 months without a cage? It just seems like it was just an unnecessary thing that they thought would just add something to the end of the show. And I didn't feel like it did. I just felt like it seemed forced, and it seemed like, I love Randy Orton and everything he has to do with being a masterful heel. I just don't think that was necessary to put it over any more than it already was.
Yeah, maybe it's not necessary, but I actually was a fan of it. I liked that it was just different, something different, that the people ran down. I didn't know what the hell they were doing. I had no idea what they were doing. But when the cage started lowering down, it reminded me of wrestling 10 years ago when these things happen. And the cage lowered back then, too, for no rhyme or reason. But maybe back then, yeah, maybe there was the thought that faces are going to come out, this is going to keep them out of the ring. At this point, with Roman Reigns, he's made so many enemies over the years being part of the Shield, he doesn't have many friends. Also, Dean Ambrose is out. So it may have not made a lot of sense. I thought it was just kind of a cool little element and something that kind of drew you in. It's like, well, what's going on here? Why are they doing this? To keep it sort of interesting at the end. I was a fan of the match. I thought the match was good. I thought it was definitely, if that wasn't the main event, the cage match damn well should have been. Because they've wrestled on 2 pay-per-views prior. Their cage match, Jericho and Bray Wyatt's, in my opinion, was the best of the 3. Not because of the cage, per se. Just in general, the match itself was more exciting for me to watch. I guess the crossbody by both, Jericho did one, Seth Rollins did one. It's cool to see those things because you never see them anymore. But I was a huge fan of Jericho Wyatt to start the show. It got the show off hot. The crowd was into it. And just to rewind real quick, back to that Jerry Springer part and how dumb and stupid it was. The crowd was into Jerry Springer. And they may just be doing it because that's what they do on the show. But it made it more interesting, I guess, per se, from a viewer standpoint, that the crowd was chanting Jerry, Jerry. That's the only thing that I thought was somewhat semi-cool of it. But back to the cage match. I was a huge fan. It was cool that they started the show with that because they generally start the show with some lengthy segment that just is too much and too long. Out of the 3 matches, which was this one top 3 for you? Or top one of the 3?
So Jericho and Wyatt, I spoke the last 2 weeks whenever we've talked shortly about this. I thought the feud was lackluster. I don't think they committed fully to it, and I don't think that they allowed Wyatt, last night, I feel like should have been unbelievable whenever Wyatt went over to end the feud. It didn't feel that way when he fell out of the cage. It just felt like, oh, he won a match. When really you want that to feel like he just beat one of the greatest WWE superstars ever to end a feud, and now he's going to put him down in the middle of the ring. I feel like it should have felt bigger. And it would have if they would have had more commitment to the feud over the last 2 months.
Right.
But I mean, what was Jericho doing last week, Ryan? He was in the ring talking about Lesnar and the title. He didn't even he had his highlight reel with Orton and Triple H and Rollins. That has nothing to do with the Wyatts. So I just feel like it was like they were just running back and forth, and they didn't know when creative wanted to actually be committed to that feud and when they were like, oh, we're just going to use Jericho in as many things as possible before he leaves. Right. And I didn't think that really helped Wyatt go over as much as he probably should have.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't do a lot for the Wyatt character to the point that, I mean, we all knew he was going to beat Jericho. He's I don't know where they're going with Wyatt now. We're 2 weeks out from the next pay-per-view. He doesn't have an opponent. He does not have a match. Jericho's going off on tour now. They basically used last night's Raw to produce the injury of the knee. Apparently he's going to appear on SmackDown tonight, but his contract's coming to an end. His short-term contract, he's gone. Who's that lead for Bray Wyatt? And I have no idea. And I'm actually very confused because we have Bray Wyatt, we have Randy Orton, we have Roman Reigns, and we have Seth Rollins. 4 people that we have no idea what the direction is. I would assume Roman Reigns is going to either wrestle Seth Rollins or Randy Orton again, but now we have Seth Rollins and Bray Wyatt left over. I'm really confused, and they have 1 week left to really tidy that up and straighten that up. Maybe they're going to utilize SmackDown tonight to figure that out, which would be great, because I feel like the SmackDown brand is getting better, getting stronger. I'm very interested to see where that goes. I guess moving... Yep, go ahead.
I want to jump in with one thing that I thought, and when I was watching it live, Ryan, I thought it was going to happen. Because how good has the Viper been the last 2 weeks? He's been great. He's been doing his heel character. He's been exactly what he needs to be as the Apex Predator. Last night, throughout the show, he attacked Jericho, which was great. Unprovoked. He wanted to make sure that he did what he needed to do to send him off. I thought it was great.
I know exactly what you're going to say right now because I think I had the same idea. Go ahead. I'll tell you if I agree with you.
I thought when Rollins left that chair in there in the cage at the end, and he took out Roman Reigns and Kane and Rollins got in, I was thinking that right there, Orton was just going to turn on everybody and be all alone, and he was going to hit Rollins with a chair. He was going to hit Kane with a chair, and everybody was going to be left in the ring. And it was going to go off here with, oh my God, what did Orton just do? He just beat a face. He just beat up 2 heels. Because I think that's the best character for Orton to be is, what is he? He's the best wrestler in the company. He's ruthless. He's the Apex Predator. He doesn't care if he's a heel or a face. He's just tired of getting ignored and disrespected by everybody that comes out and says that he's been hand-fed everything, and he doesn't want to be the henchman for Triple H anymore. That's the character I think he should be playing. And if he would have just turned on Rollins and Kane and just murdered him with a chair, that would have been the ending that would have pushed it over the top to be an above-average episode of Raw.
I agree. I thought the same thing was going to happen with the chair in there. I was like, all right, he's going to turn. I thought the same exact thing. Great minds think alike. That would have been cool. I think it's going to happen, and I definitely, because of the Seth Rollins and Kane both feeling like they are the main piece to the Authority. You can tell it. You can feel it's going to be cool when it happens.
When it does happen, I think that'll answer all those questions you just had, because if he turns, he's the guy to face Lesnar if he turns. No doubt in my mind. He's better as a heel, but if they need somebody that's legitimate and somebody that can get into that feud against Lesnar and people can get behind, Orton's that guy if they can do it the correct way.
Right, and I heard through the grapevine that the Big Show is going to be the next one to face Lesnar. I don't know if this is true. I guess it kind of makes sense, whatever, but I would like it more what we just talked about. Orton turns, Survivor Series, TLC, whatever, we keep moving forward. Those pay-per-views are main evented with Orton in there, wanting a piece of them. It would be awesome, and I hope it happens, and I think it probably will happen. I just wonder how long it's going to take for them to actually get there. But speaking of Lesnar, he wasn't there. I actually thought that the promo and the interaction between John Cena and Paul Heyman last night was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Because it was so stale for a while. Not stale, but very similar. And last night was the first time that Paul Heyman basically said, Cena, take off the wristbands. Tell these people to shut up. And it was cool because it's the first time that this was actually acknowledged on TV, because this is what everybody's saying. Everybody wants Cena to do this, to be more entertaining that way. But Cena's response, as much as maybe you didn't want to hear it, it was right on the money. And I wish that after he talked about the Purple Heart, getting the Purple Heart, screaming into the microphone, I wish the interview would have stopped there. There shouldn't have been anything else after that. But I gave it a huge thumbs up. I thought the segment was fantastic. Paul Heyman looked fantastic and came over very strong. Cena, when Cena's serious, he is very entertaining and very awesome to watch. I give that segment probably the highlight of the night for me. As far as segments go, it was definitely the best segment of the night in my book.
I would agree. Heyman knocked it out of the park again. I thought it was good that they didn't. That he said, like you said, we've been saying it on this show for 2 weeks. He said exactly what everybody's been thinking. Just change your attire, become somebody different. Stop being who you always are, and adhering to all these people who are like you and I going to wrestling shows, booing John Cena and Cena sucks. Like Paul Heyman said the things that we've been thinking. Like, wouldn't you get sick of that if you're John Cena? Don't you want to do something about it? Like, you're the face of the company. You don't have to do what people tell you. Do what you want to do. And I thought his response was good. It was good natured. It had a lot of feeling behind it, and I understand it. But it's just when you really look at it, it's the same old shit. It's the same thing, just with different sentences and different reasons. And he loves Make-A-Wish, and he loves the soldiers. I get it, but it's just the same thing. And I could not believe that he went to the saying that after Brock Lesnar was done with that Undertaker, we didn't see him for 6 months, and we still haven't. When he was done with John Cena, he was back the next week kicking ass. It's like, that's true, but that's the biggest problem. Like, he's just admitting what we all say is he should have been gone longer. Like,
yeah,
he's just no selling the Undertaker's loss on live TV.
Yeah, he no selling it a little bit. I think he's just saying, hey, the Undertaker did this. I didn't die and roll over. But yeah, I agree. Buried Taker a little bit there. By a little bit, I mean a lot of it. But I mean, I guess I was a huge fan of it just because this is Cena. This is who he is. When he comes out and he's passionate about what he speaks about, it comes off a lot better on TV. To me, I liked it a lot. And yeah, maybe the same old shit, but it was the same old shit with a twist in my book as far as a little bit more emphasis on it, a lot more passion, which I thought was fantastic. I guess I'm just trying to think of other things on Raw last night that I really want to talk about. No Jack Swagger, Ryan Drapes this week, so we don't have a Jack Swagger segment for you. Thank fucking God. Although, which I think is funny because Bo Dallas had the worst segment of the Labor Day Raw, and he was nowhere to be seen last night. I don't know what they're thinking, what they're doing, but thank God that we didn't have to see any of that shit. I'm still actually utterly shocked that the Rusev Swagger thing is done. I thought there was still one more match there for Swagger. Swagger has to win one match against them, and they didn't do it. And whatever. I mean, I'm done talking about Jack Swagger. Do you have anything on that subject for the week?
Nope, you're welcome, Drapes. You got 30 seconds. We're done. All
right. Anything else from Raw that you thought stood out or that you want to talk about or pinpoint here as we're getting kind of low or getting down there on time? Was there anything that I'm just trying to rewind in my head? Oh, the NXT. The NXT part.
The NXT part was entertaining. I thought that was great, because like we talked about last week, like the Adam Rose, Titus O'Neil, anything else that they're just throwing in there, basically, I just feel like it's a waste of time. At least the NXT stuff introduces some new guys. I mean, the four, I thought all four did a very nice job.
It was awesome.
Yeah, they only had five minutes, but they did what they could with 5 minutes, and I think that those are the types of guys that are going to get reactions when they get up to the main roster. And I think at this point it's pretty safe to say that if not all four of them, at least a darn good percentage of those guys are going to be on the roster in the next year, and they're going to be on TV regularly.
Oh, yeah, all four of those guys in that match will be on the main roster within a year. And that was great because they have this big event on Thursday with the NXT brand. They have 3 hours. 3 hours of programming. Why not bring some of these guys up and just showcase them? One match a week. That could take up 10, 12 minutes right there that we don't have to have the stupid bullshit that we've been seeing. And it was awesome. It was entertaining. Neville's finisher is disgustingly sick. It's really cool. I mean, it was good. In my book, I was a huge fan of it. Glad they did it. I hope we start seeing more of this, especially since NXT is the future of the WWE, the Performance Center, basically everything. They put their money into it. So I'm a huge fan of it. I hope they continue it. What did you have something that you were going to say about last night before I start talking about NXT?
The last thing that I thought, I mean, I know I'm a mark, obviously for Dolph Ziggler. I thought him and Miz's feud was better before last night than what happened last night. I like Sandow being involved. I think he's funny, but I feel like I've seen Dolph Ziggler talk on YouTube, on WWE Network, on things that are after Raw, like the post-Raw stuff, and he's much better on the microphone than what he was last night.
It was too scripted last night.
I feel like he was too adhering to, hey, I'm a face, I'm going to make the kids laugh, ha, 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 kind of stuff, where that's not when Dolph Ziggler's at his best. So I thought it sucks that the one time they gave that title a promo, a segment. Like it almost felt like they were trying to make the Intercontinental title mean more, like doing something like that before a pay-per-view and before the go-home show next week. It just didn't click, and that sucks for Ziggler and it sucks for that feud. But I hope they can pick it up next week and at least try to make us forget about that part.
Yeah, I guess 4 segments on Raw. Sorry, I forgot about that one. I thought it was terrible. I felt it was just too scripted by Dolph. The Miz, I don't know if it felt too scripted there too. One thing that I did like real quick during the Rusev thing, I laughed my ass off when Jerry Lawler said that I'm not going to stand up for this. I'm not even going to sit in my chair. And he legitimately sat on the ground, and I popped. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was funny as hell. Jerry's got his moments here and there, but I guess 4 segments for me I didn't like. In a 3-hour show, I'm not going to complain about that. I think we get more NXT, more in-depth on the storylines, and really, they're doing a good job without the champion being there. I mean, last night, without the world title being there, I thought they did well. Monday, we get Brock Lesnar back. I know you're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. As always, in the weeks ahead, and by the weeks ahead, I mean the week ahead, what's your takeaway? What you looking forward to?
The thing I'm looking forward to next week the most is Brock Lesnar's music hitting, because it's awesome, and I hope that him and Cena have some sort of physical interaction. If they don't, hopefully Lesnar just hits somebody with a chair or an F5 or something to give us some sort of an idea of what's going to happen after he kicks Cena's ass again in 2 weeks, because that's what's going to happen, and we all know it, and when it happens, it's going to be great, and hopefully Cena's off TV for a month and comes back as a different man, because that's what I want to see, and I just hope we get some sort of idea of, okay, where's Lesnar going after that happens, because I think we're all on board with thinking that that's the result that's going to happen at Night of Champions. And when it's done, I want to know where we're going next.
I can give you one guess to what my answer is going to be here, Dirt. I think you probably got this one. It's going to be for the third straight week in a row. Third straight week in a row. What the hell are they doing with Randy Orton? What is he going to be doing? Also with Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, Bray Wyatt, and Roman Reigns. What's going on? We got a week here to figure it out. That's what I'm looking forward to next week. Also, next week, coming at you guys, our Night of Champions predictions. I'm 0-1 on the year. I owe Travis a bottle of J. Bay brandy. Hoping next week that I can get the right picks, so that way at Night of Champions I can get a bottle of Southern Comfort come my way. Do your homework, Dirt. I'm not going to let you off easy this time.
Sounds good to me. I'll be looking into it all week. I got SmackDown on the DVR. I got NXT on Thursday night, my man. It'll be big.
All right, guys. As always, it's the Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast. We are on iTunes, we are on Stitcher, we are on YouTube, and we are on PodBean. We also have our own website on WordPress. Check us out. It's at Travis Mester, at Real Renny D. We will see you next week with our predictions for Night of Champions and our next week guest.
I hear voices in my head, they counsel me, they understand, they talk to me.
What up, everybody? It's Renny D, the host of The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, PodBean, and YouTube. Each and every week I do my best to bring you exciting guests to look inside the world of professional wrestling. I'll use my 11 years experience in professional wrestling to look at the product on TV as well as dissect the news and rumors. Follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.